Hello, and welcome to Boots to Reboots. The remakes I've reviewed in the past have dealt with many things from giant monsters, cross-dressers, to zombies. But today the movie I'm discussing involves a haunted house. And no, I'm not talking about House on Haunted Hill, Return to House on Haunted Hill, The Changeling, Poltergeist, The Sentinel, The Shining, The Others, The Haunting, The Grudge 2, The Grudge 3, The Devil's Backbone, The Orphanage, The Messengers, Ghost Ship, what the fuck? The Haunting in Connecticut, The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghost of Georgia, 13 Ghosts, The Woman in Black, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, Sinister, Paranormal Activity, Paranormal Activity 2, Paranormal Activity 3, Paranormal Activity 4, Paranormal Activity The Marked Ones, Insidious, The Conjuring, Insidious Chapter 2, A Haunted House, or Ghost.
I'll be coming home.
Like to get dirty, don't ya? Yeah.
No, the movie I'm discussing today is the 2005 remake of the Amityville Horror. The 1979 original was directed by Stuart Rosenberg and starred James Brolin and Margot Where Am I Kidder. It was based on the book by Jay Anson, which was inspired by a supposed true story. The story has led to multiple documentaries, books, spin-offs, and sequels that are still being made to this day. To begin, I should mention that I believe that the Lutz's story is a hoax. Yes, Ronnie DeFeo murdered his family, and yes, the Lutz's only lived in the house for a short time, but that's about as true as it gets. I did a lot of research on the true story before this video, and it's full of lies, contradictions, and lawsuits. I would go into detail, but we'd be here all day. If you're interested, there are tons of books, documentaries, and websites on the subject. Check it out and judge for yourself. Therefore, I'm going to try and ignore the Lutz's claims and think of the remake as just another film adapted from a book. So how good is Platinum Dune's second remake of a cult classic movie? The Family of Dysfunction. Since the characters are based on real people, they aren't that different. You have George and Kathy Lutz played by Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George, who are a newlywed couple moving into a house with Kathy's 3 children from a previous marriage. The children's names have been changed in both films to protect their identities. In the original, the children are named Greg, Matt, and Amy, and in the remake they're Billy, Michael, and Chelsea. One difference in the remake is that the children have a larger role to play. There is more time devoted to the children's relationship with George. Their real father is dead, their mom just married this guy, and they still don't know what to think of him. Is he cool? Is he an asshole? Do we call him Dad or Van Wilder? That's not right.
Which I gotta admit is better than all that Mr. Lutz crap.
There are a couple scenes devoted to just the children, and their characters shine more than the original kids, who were mostly annoying brats.
Janet, you listening? Now don't be a smartass.
In the remake, only the Michael kid is kind of annoying.
George, what are you doing to my mom?
Meanwhile, Jesse James, who plays Billy, and Chloe Grace Moretz, who plays Chelsea, turn in decent performances and have a purpose to serve. Billy is always butting heads with George, while Chelsea is off playing with her imaginary friend Jody. Chloe Grace Moretz has actually made quite a career for herself, starring in the kick-ass films Let Me In, Hugo, Dark Shadows, Carrie, and Big Mama's House 2. Oh. And speaking of performances, I was a little surprised by Ryan Reynolds. Now, I haven't seen a lot of his work besides for a couple of his comedies, but I feel he handled the darker, more dramatic stuff pretty well. He has the natural charm that makes us like him and was convincing later on when he turns. The ending of this film reminded me a lot of The Shining. Now, Jack Nicholson almost wasn't in The Shining because they wanted a sweet, sympathetic person. That way, when the character becomes crazy at the end, it was a dramatic change in personality. Nicholson just looks insane from start to finish, but he can't really help it. Ryan Reynolds is a good example of the sweet guy becoming the ex-murderer. Scary, scary, scary house. So now we'll move on to some of the more obvious differences between the movies. Well, in the previews, you probably noticed that the house looks completely different. The real house was a Dutch colonial. In the remake, it looks like they found some creepy mansion and just tacked on the key features to the front of the house. Yep, that'll do it. Which, if you've seen Dutch colonial houses, usually the creepy face part is on the side. The house is big and creepy, but very inaccurate. The real house had 3 stories, a basement, a pool, boathouse, and 6 bedrooms, so it wasn't a tiny house. But this is overkill. Another thing that bothered me was the neighborhood.
Is there a family of Mexicans next door?
What? No. The issue is that the real house has neighbors within 20 feet on each side. In the original film, the house seemed fairly isolated, but in the remake, it's out in the middle of the woods. The mystery of the Ronnie DeFeo murders is why did nobody in the family get out of bed and why didn't the neighbors hear the gunshots? You ruin some of the mystique of the original story by placing the house in a more cliched, spooky location. So not only is the house 3 times the size and in the middle of nowhere, but now there is a full-size torture chamber in the basement.
I wish we'd turn our basement into a giant Lego room. I like Legos.
In the original film, they find a tiny red room under the stairs with a well, which is supposedly a gateway to hell that should be sealed up.
I thought the Ambassador Bridge into Detroit was the gateway to hell.
The actual red room is even less impressive. It's just a tiny area under the stairs that was painted red. Psychics claim that the area was probably used to sacrifice animals, but they're probably just pulling shit out of their ass. You really can't even call it a room. You have to crouch down to get into it.
I can't sacrifice anything down in here. Ah, what the fuck?
So far, we can already see that there's a lot of creative liberties being taken in the remake.
Ah, Splinter! Fucking Splinter!
The plot. True story? Or more bullshit? This motion picture is based on the book The Amityville Horror. Certain characters and events have been changed to heighten dramatic effect. That quote pretty much sums it up. If the Lutz story is a hoax, then the book is just a heightened version of an already fake story. So then the original film is a heightened version of that heightened version of the fake story, and the remake is an even more heightened version of the heightened version of the heightened version of a hoax? I've looked into a lot of films supposedly based on true stories only to find that they weren't real in the first place or greatly heightened for dramatic effect. Films like Fargo, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Blair Witch Project were marketed as true stories, but never really happened.
Son of a bitch.
Both versions of the Amityville Horror open with Ronald DeFeo Jr. going room to room and murdering his family. Now, in the original and real-life crime, all the members of the family were found laying in bed. But in the remake, Jodie DeFeo wakes up and hides in the closet. 1 minute in, and there's already a big difference. I guess they wanted to make her stand out since we see her ghost befriend Chelsea later.
What's wrong, Ronnie?
I love you, Jodie.
Now in the original, Jodie was this red-eyed pig demon thing that Amy was friends with. Jodie the pig demon was never the dead little sister named Allison. In the remake, they combined 2 unrelated characters into one. Another odd and probably unnecessary change. Instead of meeting George and Kathy during the tour, we meet everybody at George's house. This is a nice change because we get to see how the family got along before hell breaks loose.
This sucks.
You're not kidding.
The scenes with George and the kids are some of the funnier moments in the film, but also some of the darker ones.
We're friends. We're having fun, right? Put your hands up there.
So George and Kathy take a tour of the house on 112 Ocean Avenue, changed to 412 in the remake, and fall in love with it. There's plenty of room for the kids, a place for George's boat, and he can move his office into the basement. Hell, and it's only $80,000. It's too good to be true. Literally. They learn about the murders, and even though it's creepy, they decide to buy it anyway. The similarities are that a dysfunctional family moves into a haunted house, but from here, the remake has little to do with the source material. It seems that writer Scott Kozar, director Andrew Douglas, and Platinum Dunes wanted to reinvent the legend. However, I wish the remake had stuck a little bit closer to the book or portrayed the events in the original film in a better way. For instance, in the book there's a story about this lion statue that reportedly attacked George. In the original movie, we see George trip on the statue and later Kathy finds bite marks on his leg, but it's never really obvious what happened. With today's technology, they could have portrayed that better. You know, kind of like the inclusion of the hedge animals in the Shining miniseries. Oh, wait. Oh, wait, that sucked. Oh. Oh, God. Like most modern haunted house movies, the rest of the remake is a series of quieter moments with the occasional jump scare. Jump scares that aren't found in the source material. While George and Kathy were getting it on, George never saw Jody hanging herself. That jump scare doesn't even make sense. Something related to her actual cause of death would have been scarier. In fact, within the first 20 minutes of the movie, we get at least 10 jump scares from Jody.
Who are you talking to?
The girl who lives in my closet.
I don't find her scary because she was an innocent little girl who was murdered. She wasn't evil. But if you're going to play her off as scary, then you need to space these out more. Michael never saw an Indian in the bathroom mirror, and Indians were never seen under the water of the boathouse. Indians really didn't play a role in the original film. They also never reported the magnets on the fridge spelling out evil messages. The nerdy babysitter is now a really sexy babysitter for comic relief.
You sure you don't want a babysitter?
Now the story goes that the babysitter was locked in the closet for a long time even though there weren't any locks on the door. In the remake, not only does the sitter get trapped in the closet, but she encounters Jody's ghost and is so traumatized, she's hauled out on a stretcher when George and Kathy return home. Even though this scene was greatly heightened for dramatic effect, it's probably the best scene in the movie. One huge contrast between the two films involves Harry the dog. In the original ending, George runs back into the house to grab Harry despite Kathy's pleas. Well, midway through the remake, George is investigating the boathouse and kills the dog with the axe.
Why do doggies always have to die in these movies? Jerks.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. A live dog, dead dog. Running around playing fetch, hole in the ground fucking dead! Therefore, all the phantom barking that George hears during the film is another remake creation. Another jump scare in the remake involves George taking a bath. The real George never reported taking a bath and hands grabbing at him. This scene is probably just a metaphor for all the girls wishing they could attack a naked Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, baby, you tear that flesh. I also feel that Ryan Reynolds may be a little too buff for this role. I highly doubt the real George Lutz had abs like that. James Brolin didn't have trouble keeping his shirt on. It's as if they wrote new scenes for Reynolds to take his shirt off.
Wait, doesn't this movie take place in December?
Hey, asshole, maybe that's why you're always cold.
Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be complaining if Melissa George was topless in several scenes. I understand that women need some eye candy too, but it's not an accurate portrayal of the real person. When Charlize Theron played serial killer Eileen Warnow, she gained weight and with the help of makeup was transformed into a stunning likeness of the actual person. She didn't stay sexy. It'd be as if they made a film about Al Capone and instead of casting a heavy person, they cast a good-looking, physically fit guy like Christian Bale.
Oh my god. Andy, what is that? What is that? Get it off the screen!
So Hollywood, stop making people sexy. It's okay to cast normal-looking people. Physical beauty didn't make me care any more for them than I did for them. Speaking of Bale and Theron, it's even okay for good-looking celebrities to alter their image for a role. The only altering Ryan Reynolds did was grow a beard. Another obvious difference in the remake is that the priest arrives towards the end of the film instead of the beginning when they're still unpacking. He never develops boils, goes blind, or has the car incident. The only similarity is the famous scene where the priest shows up to bless the house, is swarmed by flies, and a terrifying voice tells him to get out. To me, this scene is inferior to the one in the original because of the computer-generated flies.
Oh, my eyes! My eyes!
In the 70s, they could get real flies. For Christ's sake, in Scary Movie 2, they had real flies.
Please, God, help me to release this demon!
Again, pacing is very important in horror movies. The disembodied voice saying "get out" is happening amongst the chaos that it doesn't really stand out. However, in the original, it's as if time stood still and it's a lot scarier. Yeah, if you don't mind me, I think I have to go change my underwear. I'll be right back. Other differences include Kathy getting her hair caught in the boat propeller and George contemplating killing her for a moment. Crazy son of a bitch.
Are you fucking crazy, George? Have you lost your mind? You tried to kill me!
George also never built coffins in the basement. In the remake, this really came out of nowhere and made me crack up. It's just too random. I know George has been chopping wood topless throughout the movie, but I thought that was for the furnace. Maybe if they showed him hammering some boards together, it would have made more sense. Like the Michael kid could have asked him, "George, what are you doing?" And George could have told him to fuck off, and at the end it's revealed that he was building coffins.
I wonder what kind of lacquer he used on those crosses.
The family also never climbed all over the roof of the house, they never tied up George, and never left the house in the boat. They took the van.
Are we going to the Grand Canyon?
That's pretty much the entire remake. As you can see, 90% of the remake consists of new material that never happened in any previous version of the story. John Ketchum's name was mentioned only once in the original film.
It's right here, it's history. John Ketchum.
So?
Listen, they ran him out of Salem for being a witch. You're living on some sort of special ground that devil worship, death, sacrifice.
In the remake, Reverend Jeremiah Ketchum is an actual character and the lead villain of the story. We keep seeing the phrase "Ketchum, kill him" everywhere, and the characters hear disembodied voices saying it as well. We learn that Ketchum slit his throat down in his dungeon so his spirit would haunt the land and he terrorizes Jodie's ghost. Now, records show that there were several John Ketchums in the Amityville area. Apparently, it was a popular name in the 17th century. Hell, 1 mile from the real house there's even a Ketchum Avenue. But it could never be proven that any of them actually lived on or near the land that the house sits on, and if they were ever a witch or into satanic practices. If I had to guess, I'd say that the Lutzes or author Jay Anson researched the local history, saw the Ketchum name, and decided he'd make a good witch for their story.
Those things that existed before movies.
During my first viewing, this remake upset me because the producers swore it would stick closer to the book. That made me want to check out the novel, so I did. And you know what? They were full of shit. If anything, the original is a more faithful adaptation while the remake does its own thing. I was interested in seeing how they would update some of those paranormal accounts, and they went the opposite direction by ignoring the source material. And the very few scenes from the original and book they do include fall flat in comparison. I wanted to see an updated pig demon, the lion statue attack, the strange odors, Kathy appearing as an old hag, the sounds of a marching band, the upside-down crucifix, and so on.
Oh wait, they put the cross on the doorknob. I guess that counts.
The remake traded in suspense for jump scares, but I guess it's hard to turn a phantom odor into a jump scare. The conclusion. The remake moves along at a pretty quick pace, and the credits begin to roll at the 1 hour and 22 minute mark. Time-wise, you don't get a lot of bang for your buck compared to the original, which is 2 hours long. The other thing the remake lacks is memorable music. The score for the original was composed by Lalo Schifrin. Contrary to popular belief, the score for that film was not the legendary rejected score composed for The Exorcist. However, it is pretty creepy and gets stuck in my head. La 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 la. Du, 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 du. With that said, does the remake of the Amityville Horror deserve the boot? Years ago, before therapy, I would have definitely said yes, but I'm starting to lean towards no.
Yes! And no.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying no. But I'm leaning towards yes.
Then you're saying yes.
No.
Then it's no.
Not necessarily.
It fails as an adaptation, but an adaptation of what? A hoax? Forget the Lutzes and that whole mess because I enjoy the films. As a haunted house movie, the remake really isn't that bad. The runtime could be longer, the pace could have been slowed down, and there were a number of awkward jump scares, but it's slowly growing on me. I see the logic in combining certain characters, and while the house doesn't resemble the original, it's kind of cool looking. The cinematography is pretty good, the performances are okay, and the elaborate backstory, although inaccurate, is interesting. I now see the Amityville Horror for what it really is. Plain and simple, it's one of the greatest haunted house stories ever told, whether it's real or fake. Platinum Dunes took the simple synopsis of the original and they made it their own. The 2005 version is okay. It's not great, nor is it awful. No matter what, the remake is better than some of the sequels, that's for sure. Therefore, the remake of the Amityville Horror is safe, but just barely. This has been Boots to Reboots. Thanks for watching.
Oh.